wake up at 3 a.m., pray this powerful prayer. Have you ever woken up at 3 a.m. for no obvious reason? No alarm, no noise, just wide awake. And the first thing that tries to talk to you isn't peace, it's your thoughts. Your mind starts replaying problems, worries, what ifs, and things you cannot fix in that moment. And if you're not careful, you'll lie there stressed, exhausted, and defeated before the day even starts. But listen to me, that moment is not meant for fear. It's meant for prayer. Sometimes God lets us wake up in the quiet because that's the only time we'll actually slow down and listen. During the day, we're busy. We're rushing. We're multitasking. But at 3 a.m., there's no audience, no distractions, just you and God. And that's powerful. Instead of saying, why am I awake? Try saying, God, what do you want to show me? Because worry is a signal, but prayer is the solution. Now let me say this clearly. Waking up at 3 a.m. doesn't mean something bad is going to happen. It means God might be inviting you to give him something you've been holding on to too tightly. So when you wake up, don't grab your phone. Don't rehearse your problems. Don't let fear preach to you. Pray this, Lord, I give you every worry I can't fix. I trust you with what I don't understand. I receive your peace right now. Cover my mind, calm my heart, and fight the battles I cannot see. I choose faith over fear, rest over stress, and trust over control. In Jesus' name, amen. Here's the truth. Prayer doesn't always change the situation immediately, but it always changes you. It shifts your heart. It lifts the weight. It reminds you that you are not alone. You don't need all the answers at 3 a.m. You just need to remember who's in control. And once you pray, do something radical. Go back to sleep in faith. Because peace isn't found in figuring everything out. Peace is found in trusting the one who already has. So the next time you wake up in the middle of the night, don't panic. Smile, rest. God's got you even at 3 a.m. When the world goes quiet, something powerful happens inside us. The noise fades, the pressure eases, and the constant demands for our attention finally take a pause. During the day, our minds are pulled in 1,000 directions, phones buzzing, people talking, responsibilities piling up. Even when we want to hear God, life can be loud. But in the quiet hours, especially when everything else is still, our spirit finally has room to breathe. There's something about silence that strips away pretense. You don't have to perform. You don't have to impress anyone. It's just you awake, aware, and open. Quiet hours have a way of exposing what we've been carrying. Thoughts we push down during the day rise to the surface. Worries we avoided suddenly demand attention. And while that can feel uncomfortable, it's also where deep work begins. God often does his most meaningful work when there's nothing competing for your focus. In the silence, you're more honest. You're less guarded. You're not rushing to the next thing. You're present. And presence is powerful. In those moments, your spirit can hear clearly because it's no longer fighting for space. You start to sense direction instead of confusion, peace instead of pressure, clarity instead of chaos. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's a gentle reassurance. Sometimes it's a quiet correction. Sometimes it's just a deep sense that you're not alone. Silence sharpens your awareness. You begin to notice what really matters and what you've been giving too much energy to. Quiet hours also teach trust. You realize how little control you actually have and how much relief comes from letting go. There's no fixing everything at once. No solving every problem. Just surrender. And surrender is not weakness, it's strength rooted in faith. When distractions are gone, faith doesn't have to compete with fear as loudly. You can hear truth more clearly than the lies that usually shout at you during the day. This is where growth happens, not in the rush, but in the stillness. Not in the crowd, but in the quiet. When everything else steps back, your spirit steps forward. And in that space, something inside you begins to realign, to heal, to settle, to listen, to receive, to become more aware of what has always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise. Waking up in the middle of the night can feel strange, even frustrating, especially when you didn't plan for it. You might immediately assume something is wrong, that your sleep is broken, or that anxiety is creeping in again. But not every interruption is negative. Sometimes it's not your body malfunctioning or your mind overthinking. Sometimes it's an invitation. An invitation to pause, to notice, to turn your attention away from everything pulling at you during the day and towards something deeper. So often we move through life on autopilot. We wake up, rush through responsibilities, manage problems, meet expectations, and collapse into bed exhausted. There's little space left to reflect, to pray, or to listen. When you wake up unexpectedly, especially during the quiet hours, it creates a gap in that routine, a moment where nothing is demanded of you. No one needs an answer. No task needs to be completed. It's just awareness. And that awareness can become sacred if you allow it. An invitation doesn't force you. It simply waits for your response. You can turn over, scroll through your phone, or let worry take over. Or you can recognize that this moment might be an opportunity to release what you've been holding, to acknowledge emotions you've ignored, or to speak honestly from the heart. In those moments, prayer doesn't need fancy words or long speeches. It can be as simple as admitting you're tired, uncertain, or overwhelmed. It can be as quiet as listening instead of talking. Being awake when everything else is still can remind you that you are more than your schedule and your struggles. It slows you down enough to feel what you've been too busy to feel and to notice what you've been too distracted to notice. The invitation isn't about fear or urgency. It's about connection. It's about being present instead of reactive. It's about choosing trust over control when you realize there's nothing you can fix at that hour anyway. Those moments can gently shift your perspective. What felt overwhelming during the day may feel smaller. What felt confusing may feel less urgent. And even if nothing changes immediately, something inside you softens. You begin to respond instead of react, to rest instead of resist, to acknowledge that you don't have to carry everything alone, even in the middle of the night. There is something powerful about addressing the weight you're carrying before the day even starts. Most people wake up and immediately step into responsibility, pressure, and expectation. The mind starts racing with to-do lists, unfinished conversations, and problems waiting to be solved. By the time the day officially begins, the heart is already tired. But prayer in those early or unexpected hours changes the order of things. Instead of the day placing its burden on you, you place the burden into God's hands first. So many of us try to carry tomorrow with today's strength, and it exhausts us. We lie awake thinking about conversations that haven't happened yet, outcomes we can't predict, and problems we don't have answers for. Prayer interrupts that cycle. It doesn't deny the reality of what's coming, but it refuses to let fear lead the way. When you pray before the day begins, you're saying, I'm not walking into this alone. I'm not relying only on myself. Prayer doesn't always remove responsibility, but it redistributes the weight. What felt heavy in your chest begins to loosen. What felt urgent begins to slow down. You may still have challenges to face, but they no longer sit on your shoulders the same way. There's a difference between having a problem and being crushed by it. Prayer creates that difference. It reminds your soul that you were never meant to manage everything on your own. In those quiet moments, you gain perspective. You remember that not every battle requires your effort, your explanation, or your control. Some things simply require trust. When you pray early, you're choosing to respond instead of react. You're choosing faith before fear has a chance to take over. You're choosing peace before the noise of the day tries to steal it. That shift matters more than we realize. How you start internally often determines how you respond externally. A prayed up heart doesn't mean you won't feel pressure, but it means pressure won't dominate you. It means when stress shows up, it doesn't surprise you. When challenges arise, they don't define you. Something inside you remains steady, grounded, and anchored. By giving the burden away before the day begins, you step forward lighter, calmer, and more aware. You may not know how everything will work out, but you know who you've entrusted it to, and that knowledge settles your spirit in a way nothing else can. So much of our exhaustion comes from trying to control things that were never meant to be controlled by us. We plan, analyze, replay conversations, and imagine every possible outcome, believing that if we think hard enough, we can prevent disappointment or pain. But control is a heavy burden, and the more tightly we hold it, the more anxious we become. Trust works differently. Trust doesn't demand certainty. It rests even when answers are incomplete. Peace doesn't arrive when everything makes sense. It arrives when you decide to stop fighting for control and start leaning into faith. That decision is rarely loud or dramatic. It often happens quietly, in moments when you realize you've reached the end of your own strength. When you admit you don't know what to do next, something shifts. The pressure to figure everything out begins to ease, and your heart finds room to breathe. Trust requires humility. It's the willingness to say, I can't handle this on my own, and I don't have to. That surrender doesn't make you passive. It makes you anchored. You stop being tossed around by every thought and fear because your confidence is no longer rooted in outcomes. It's rooted in belief. Even when circumstances remain uncertain, your inner world becomes steadier. Control focuses on the problem, but trust focuses on the presence of God in the middle of the problem. One keeps your mind restless. The other keeps your spirit settled. When you choose trust, you're not ignoring reality. You're choosing where to place your focus. You acknowledge the challenge, but you refuse to let it dominate your peace. That kind of peace doesn't depend on instant solutions. It comes from knowing you are seen, supported, and held. There is deep rest in letting go, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. You learn that peace is not something you chase or manufacture. It's something you receive when you loosen your grip and allow faith to take the lead. And even when the path ahead is unclear, your heart remains calm, grounded, and confident that you are not walking it alone,